So, hi everybody. My name is Richie Sarachnikorn. I use he, him pronouns. I am the racial justice representative at the CGSA this year.
And hi, I'm Kenzie. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the coordinator for the multiplayer mentorship program. And if you are joining us in the audience, please feel free to drop a little introduction of who you are and where you're joining from in the chat.
Kenzie and I are genuinely very, very excited, partly because it's the end of the year, but also to sort of wrap up this thing that been working on as a CGSA collective and community for now over 12 weeks. And we call it the Multiplayer Mentorship Program, right? This is our latest initiative with the Canadian Game Studies Association. This sort of initiative was funded by the Federation for the Humanities and Social Sciences, so we are very grateful for them. Um, for many of us in academia, mentorship is sort of an unquestioned part of the game, right? And usually the role goes to professors, late stage PhD students, and also postdocs. But as game scholars, we know that putting all of our skills, into intelligence or publications is not exactly a wise move. We're supposed to diversify. So if we're all players in this game, so to speak, then why can't we acknowledge other creative, unwritten, or surprising skills that can offer others, right? And so last fall, the CGSA team kickstarted the multiplayer mentorship program. For 10 weeks, two people like Nora and Caighlan today met each other from within the CGSA community and exchanged and taught skills for and with one another. Simply, they were doing what we call mutual mentorship. And so this is our second of four two-player talks that we're going to be sort of showcasing that journey. You can see.
Awesome. And before we get kind of officially underway, we want to, of course, acknowledge that all of us are joining from locations across Turtle Island and are working and living on these traditional territories of diverse Indigenous communities, and as a result, have ongoing responsibilities to treaty and reconciliation. So in particular, the digital infrastructure for these talks is being provided by the University of Alberta in Amiskwaciy-Waskahigan on Treaty 6, which is the traditional territory of the Nahiawa, Niitsitapi, Métis, Nakota, Dene, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples, and also by Zoom, which is headquartered in San Jose, which is the traditional territory of the Muwekma Ohlone.
On this side in Concordia University in Montreal, we are located on unceded Indigenous lands, which we recognize that the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation are the custodians of the lands and the waters that I myself am gathered on today. Historically, Chichoke, or Montreal, is known as a gathering space for many First Nations, and today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We, as a collective, but also at Concordia University, are committed to respect our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples in the Montreal community.
And as a group, we want to acknowledge that many of our academic institutions have been and continue to be instruments for colonial violence and dispossession, and affirm our responsibility to hold these institutions accountable and work towards true reconciliation.
So before Nora and Caighlan take it away, we'd like to sort of lay out some house rules, so to speak. During the talk, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat. It works this time. And towards the end, Kenzie and I will be able to sort of pick out the questions. We'll ask them as much as we can. And just so everybody knows, this meeting is also being recorded because we're also going to be posting this on our YouTube just to sort of share the knowledge even after the webinar is done.
Awesome. So with that, let's get started. So for the second of our four two-player talks, we are welcoming Nora Perry and Caighlan Smith. So we will hand it over to you two to tell us what you've been working on. Take it away.
Hi everyone. I think Caitlin's gonna screen share. Welcome to our talk, Speedrunning Academia, Interdisciplinary Game Research Creation. We had some fun with the title. My name is Nora Perry. I'm coming to you virtually from the unceded Coast Salish Nation of the Songhees people, which is also known as Victoria, where I'm grateful to be visiting currently. I also work, live, and play on the Musqueam and Squamish people's land, over colloquially known as Vancouver, where UBC is located.
Hi everyone, I'm Caighlan Smith and I'm calling from St. John's, Newfoundland, which is located in the ancestral and unceded territory of the Beothuk. The lands and waters in and around the city have also traditionally served as a gathering place for the Mi'kmaq, and this province continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, who are respectfully acknowledged as past, present, and future caretakers of this land. So we'll
So
start
this,
with a little extra about us. Sorry, missed my
no,
transition already.
so I'm so excited to introduce Caitlin. She is a Vanier scholar and the author of 6 fiction books. Caitlin holds a master's in fantasy literature from the University of Glasgow, a doctorate in English and communication studies from Memorial University, and her research focuses on video games, popular culture, and emergent narrative technologies.
And I'm also very excited to introduce Nora, who is a current PhD student in the Literacy and Language Education program at UBC and holds a master's from the same program. Prior to this, she worked as a teacher in rural BC. She's worked on over 7 studies using video games in classroom settings.
So we came to MMP looking for both different things. I came looking to look for someone who was comfortable with academic writing as a practice and not just as part of a job. Coming from an education background, I'm always learning how to weave writing more into my everyday. So I was really obviously thrilled to be paired with somebody who was such an established author.
Meanwhile, I came to the program hoping to learn more about research methods I didn't really get much chance to explore in my degree. I kind of focused more on content analysis in my academic background, lots of very theory-heavy stuff, but I wanted to get more into applying that in qualitative research related especially to interviews and participant observation. So it's been super exciting to get to learn from Nora about her research and work in the classroom and with interview participants.
So this is just a funny sort of side note as we got started, but the screenshot is from the CGSA Presentation Awards from 2023. And aside from the mutual bragging that showing this does, it was this funny coincidence that I stumbled upon with my co-author listed on this, Jess Wind, that Caitlin had won the same award that I had 3 years ago. It was so funny because Caitlyn's work here was on democratic and authoritarian agency in narrative choice games, which is a piece that she will be expanding on this year. And my work with Jess was on brick and mortar video game stores and the cultures of people around them with a post-pandemic lens. So hopefully sequels to both of these projects will be available soon as the award requests we'd like to fulfill someday.
Fingers crossed. So when the program first started, we began with establishing a rapport. We wanted to kind of get to know each other as friends first and see how that went. It went very smoothly. It actually was surprisingly easy. So you guys did great with this matchup. We started sharing our taste in video games naturally. That came first. But we also found we had a lot of crossover in our interest in feminist theory and posthumanist theory. And we found we shared a lot of goals of what we wanted to do with our time in the mutual mentorship program. So our initial idea here, because we knew we wanted to do some kind of project, um, was to maybe look at doing some grant writing. Nora and I had both had different experiences with that, and we thought there were skills in there we could teach each other. So we were looking at coming up with a project idea where we could also try to apply for a grant. And the idea was, even if we didn't get the grant, we'd be developing those skills, working on our partnership, and could maybe do our project anyway. But slight spoilers, this is not what we ended up doing. However, it got us on the track to do something else that led to a lot of other things.
As you can tell, we're both really excited to work together, so we really jumped in. With the homework aspect, it's much more, that sounds much more formal than any process we did, but we did offer some foundational games and literature pieces that separately we'd play and read and report back every week to sort of create this shared base of knowledge between the two of us. So one of the things we really bonded over was this discussion of the importance of learning how to teach as an instructor or lecturer at the university level. We've both found so much joy in educating, but we wish there was more support when getting started, and especially in this time frame, more clear guidelines on how to address issues as they arise, specifically with regards to the use of AI tools by students and instructors. So, in bonding over our shared and disparate tastes in video games, we learned a lot more about each other. For instance, Caitlin gravitates towards post-apocalyptic narrative games and high fantasy genre games.
Meanwhile, Nora loves puzzle games and story-driven games with a heavy emphasis on the puzzle mechanics and exploration. We both also found we gravitate towards genre bending and trope subversion in games. And we also really love cozy games and came very close to doing some work with that. Again, we got distracted by something else, which we'll get to soon. But we're also both big tabletop role-playing game fans, as it turns out, and we got to geek out about Dungeons and Dragons a bit before we got back into our video game chats. We also might have been a little tempted to design a TTRPG one-shot as our co-project, but spoiler again, that is not what we got lured into doing. Instead, we found that we were really drawn to this idea of digital media engagement in and through the lens of generative AI today, and kind of a lot of the issues surrounding that as teachers, also as analysts, and just as media consumers. So this is ultimately where our attention went back to. However, just to give you guys some more actual fun details first about the games we picked, our game homework, we gave each other to try to establish a shared base of what we both liked, but also mechanics that we might find interesting and could maybe leverage if we decided to try and design a game together. So we started small with one computer game and one more casual game or phone app. I suggested Slay the Princess as a subversive trope bending game for my larger game. And then for a smaller like app kind of game, I suggested BitLife. For those who haven't played BitLife, it's a life sim that uses stats and generates different life sim mechanics in order to create life events that take place. And it gives you an overarching idea of your character's life, and you get to make some choices. Anyway, I'll move on to Nora's suggestions because I got to play those and those are super fun. First of all, she preferred Wander Song, which is her personal favorite game, and that subverts the hero trope, a trope I'm very interested in and actually did some work on in my doctoral degree, so this was just perfect for me. I had not heard of the game before. It's so cute and also kind of devastating, so I would highly recommend it as well. But you get to play a little bard who's trying to save the world before a traditional hero tries to end it, so that's also kind of interesting. Nora also suggested Samsara Room by Rusty Lake, which is a kind of horror puzzle game app with lots of really interesting conditional puzzle mechanics and a very unsettling art style. So very cool all around. Finally, this is not what we suggested each other because this would be cruel for a 10-week program. We did not suggest Baldur's Gate 3. We both happened to have started playing it around the same time prior to the start of the program. We were both very late coming to Baldur's Gate 3, but it meant that we got to talk about the game kind of with fresh eyes, having not played it like 10 times already, which a lot of respect to the people who have. It's a wonderful game. But we got to have some really important debates around this, such as like the hardest in-game moral decisions, what the best player class is, and of course, who the most romanceable or unromanceable NPCs might be. Very important stuff. For those who are curious, Nora played a rogue her first time, which I would always recommend. They're my favorite class. I, however, played a sorcerer for my first run through. One of us did start with a dirge run, but we're not going to say who.
So it was actually from BitLife, which is Caitlin's suggestion, that I initially had the idea that developed into our major co-mentorship project. For those of you who haven't played it, as Caitlin mentioned, it's this there's a lot of other aspects to it, but then there's a mini game for reading. And mini game here is kind of an ironic name for it, but it asks the players to tap a book to read its pages. So the longer the book, the more taps. You just sit there and the mechanic of the pages just sort of goes through. This led us to this concept of a reading simulator, which we're going to talk about more as we go into what we developed. We quickly noted that we had incredibly similar literature interests. Due to our disparate faculties, we had read generally completely different scholars. There was a lot of us going just back and forth, sharing articles, and then the next week coming back and discussing what the other person had put forward. We also both shared our general opinions on AI and our choices not to use it, where we could avoid it, like changing browsers or search engines.
So prior to the program, we had both done some basic game creation and coding. Nora had worked in a Twine before to build a game used in classrooms in BC on menstrual equity, and she showed it to me, and it's really cool. And she also teaches some basic tooling tools to her students as a lecturer at UBC. Meanwhile, I attended a game design workshop at the University of Utrecht during my doctoral studies, where I got to work with other graduate students to design a really simple game in Unity. My group made a short, impossible quiz game meant to parody immigration interviews and highlight intense and often biased immigration procedures. It did at least feature some cute polar bears, so there's that. So between my very novice Unity experience and Nora's experience making educational games, we had a bit of starting ground to help us move forward with our project idea. We were both still game making beginners, though, very much so. So we decided to forego our idea to do the funding applications during the 10 weeks and focus on learning game design together instead. We were particularly enthusiastic about making something more out of our initial reading gameplay concept and explore more in depth our queries about AI and literacy.
So you can see in these pictures, we're thinking progressively harder by how we point to our heads in each photo. Obviously, we're getting much smarter as we go along. Uh, these conversations, aside from just making us smarter, did expand our shared knowledge base that we touched on earlier. In particular, our discussions of how different theories talked across our different faculties and also video games was one of our favorite parts for this time of collaboration. I always left our chats with new ideas and a much longer reading list. One of the theories that I brought forward in our discussions for the potential reading simulator was Seaton's concept of attention economy. For those unfamiliar, Seaton expands on the sociologist Dominique Boulier's concepts of the regimes of attention to talk about, in this world of internet and almost unlimited access to education, what we have to spend is time and attention. In particular, with the concept of our game, we gravitated towards this regime of alarm, which is the reaction to very stimulating or aggressive alerts, pushing attention and keeping it more in more exciting ways, as a lot of us with smartphones might think there's all of those alerts that are coming through all the time. So our idea of a game research creation generally solidified, and we put together two abstracts, one focusing more on the educational impacts of the game, and one focusing more on a literature background for it. We were unfortunately too late to submit any of these to present at CGSA because of the MMP timeline. So maybe next year we can bring our final game to a game showcase or something. The writing of these abstracts really set the tone for how we collaborated, which was a very focused laser of us combining our experience and really just zeroing in mostly when we were together and then trying to set up where we would pick up next week. For productivity, it worked really well for both of us as it was a space to put down other projects, have someone hold you accountable, and get instant feedback on our shared idea of what we wanted to put forward.
Our next steps, however, were our most treacherous. Game building is, as many people in this Zoom room know, I'm sure, a labor of love and learning. Even with the more simple mechanics we were employing and with collaborating on them, game building was, and still kind of is, a very slow going process for us. As beginners, we ran into some issues right away, of course. We struggled at first even to just share our project through GitHub. That was a big, kind of silly learning curve. But with time, patience, and mutual troubleshooting, alongside plenty of video tutorials, we started adjusting to Unity and making advancements with our project. As we were still in the early game making stages, however, we were informed that both of our initial abstract proposals were accepted.
So this was really wonderful and also a really overwhelming moment as we were now looking down the barrel of hours of building and making, as well as now on the hook for one paper and two presentations aside from this current one. One big hurdle was not the acceptances, but in this partnership, making for sure we both felt comfortable creating and committing to the time needed to work for what we wanted to make. In that way, scheduling intensive time to work on each piece and then take notes on what we did and what we wanted to do next to completely leave the project alone until our next meeting helped us keep enthusiasm up. We were also really flexible when life came up, which made it easy to reschedule when we could or just have a longer meeting the next week when things got crazy. So, navigating our co-writing relationship was both a learning curve and shockingly easy. Much of the abstract writing was simple, one of us writing parts while the other one was editing and fleshing out what we had. It was easy together to pause, revisit, and recenter before moving forward.
So the end result of all of that so far is that we have two upcoming scheduled presentations. If anyone is attending the GamesLit conference in June this year in Rome, we'll be there online. And if anyone is attending the European Game-Based Learning Conference in the fall, we're hoping to attend in person, but either way, we will be presenting. So maybe see you guys at either one or both. Who knows? So our paper is fully written as a status update and submitted, and that process occurred a bit more independently from the 10-week process. Due to the myriad of other tasks we were both called to do during that time, after the teaching term, we set aside a large meeting time with chunks of around 3 to 4 hours in a 3-day period so that we could co-write our paper. And we, as Nora mentioned previously, we had plenty of check-ins to make sure we were both comfortable with the amount of time we were dedicating. There were times we had to reschedule our meetings, but we did lock in on this chunk and it really worked. And what also helped was that we'd each focused more on the thinking in different areas of the paper prior to this. So we were able to bring it together, talk through what we've done, collaborate on the edit and flow of the paper, as well as flesh out some of our discussions on game creation, which also helped us go back and make some adjustments with the game itself. So the paper writing was 3 heavy days, but actually it was pretty fun and surprisingly productive, and helped us with some other stuff moving forward.
At the conferences, we're going to discuss our research game creation in a lot more depth, so we'll touch on it definitely today, but hopefully we'll have a playable version up and available for testers if you are around. So in this process, learning from Caighlan has been so inspiring. She is so incredibly humble for someone who holds such a depth of knowledge. Between her publications, both academic and fiction, she gracefully flows through every moment that I would just sit stressed out and stare at our shared document, not typing anything. Watching her navigate the mini production she was working on while we were creating together was so wildly impressive, and I am thrilled to get to brag and announce her postdoc acceptance at York, which happened during these past 10 weeks. So a little round of applause there. Uh, Caighlan brought such an ease of teaching and patience when she brought me to the Unity side of things, and the way she collected and understood conference calls and for papers and brought the structures of abstracts into how we addressed each one made for such a clear process for how to get initial drafts on the page. I found her strategies with conference and literature management incredibly helpful, especially someone who gets inundated by hundreds of tabs, and I know some of you out there might share that habit with me. Uh, she has such a way of coordinating and just pulling it all together, and I've been applying a lot of the stuff I've learned from her to my other projects as well.
It's also been such a pleasure for me to get to learn from Nora. She brings so many amazing creative and academic ideas to our discussions while also being a super supportive listener. It's been so much fun to brainstorm with her, share our experiences in academia, sometimes celebrating, sometimes commiserating. We all know what it's like. And of course, it's been super fun to trade reading and gaming recommendations with her. I always come out of our meetings feeling energized and encouraged, whether encouraged about our joint projects or encouraged about how Nora is always immediately so supportive of whatever else I have going on in my life. While I learned so much from Nora about how to be an amazing collaborator, one of the biggest learning moments for me has been in our collaborative writing. While I've written with co-authors before and it's gone well, I found Nora's organizational approach to collaborative writing just really, really clicked for me and taught me a lot about what processes actually allow me to bring my best to the co-writing process. Her particular approaches for paper outlining, task delegations, and check-in scheduling made the process not only feel easy, but really fun, and it led to a productive and filling co-writing session every time. I've since even adapted some of Nora's project planning methods to my own solo work, and I'm really happy with the results. There was a paper I was kind of drowning with that's sort of due at the end of this month, and I'm not drowning anymore, and that's because of Nora. But anyway, overall, it's been so rewarding learning from and learning with Nora as we jumped into tackling game design together.
So just for you to get an idea of what our game looks like and is, it's called Can You Even Read? And this is a screenshot from our current prototype. Um, Can You Even Read calls the player to read an open source copy of the picture of Dorian Gray during a reading simulation. So you can see the PDF reader on the screen here. As the player reads, social media alerts, short form videos, advertisements, that kind of thing keep popping up faster and faster and faster. Um, and they must close them quickly to maintain the attention tracker at the bottom of the screen. At varying points in reading, or when the tracker falls down to certain percentages, the player is then prompted by our conversation AI bot to summarize the reading they've done so far and the rest of the book. We were inspired to create this based on our own struggles in reading and how we've seen our attention pulled in so many different directions. In PDF readers like Adobe, AI tools have been integrated in the corner, constantly offering their support. It feels to us impossible to separate the act of reading on a screen and so many other ways your attention is divided. Even when reading a physical book, I have to move my phone away from me because the notifications keep popping up, the emails from work, that kind of thing, pull you away from what you're trying to do and focus on.
I also do the same. My phone is not even in my office with me right now. I just kind of put it in timeout. I had to. So we both have noticed like our attention is going away too, and it was a big inspiration for this. So all in all, this game is meant to prompt conversation on what we are seeding to AI when it summarizes content for us, as well as where our attention is pulled in today's very fractured attention economy anyway, while we're interacting with digital media. Close reading becomes much more difficult in this kind of environment as our attention is split in so many different directions. Some threatening, some appealing, some important and must be immediately addressed, but nonetheless, it does do something to our attention. So we want to dig into that from, of course, a game-based perspective. And we're both hoping to use this game as we teach as sessional lectures as well moving forward. For example, I've taught in communication studies, game studies, and English literature, so there's lots of ways I can use the game in my work. And Nora teaches in digital media and English education, so the game is perfect for that as well. We both foresee using the tool to get students to think about their own reading experiences in particular, and Nora will also be able to offer the game to teacher candidates to use in their own classrooms. While these goals are set far in the future, though, obviously very big term goals, we're looking forward to working towards them together. Even though the mutual mentorship program has ended, it feels like the two of us are just getting started.
So thanks so much for attending our talk, everyone, and please feel free to reach out to either of us if you'd like to chat more or have access to the game once it's released. We hope we'll see you. We hope you'll get to see our game in action sometime soon, and a big thanks to CGSA and the MMP coordinators for putting all of this together. This program has been such an incredible journey for both of us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Oh, it's so heartwarming. And as folks are saying in the chat, that screenshot is so like very evocative. I love it. Okay, so it's chat time. If anyone in the audience has a question, you can either raise your little digital hand and we can let you come on mic to ask your question, or feel free to just type it in the chat and we will be the AI voice that reads your question aloud. Um, yeah, so feel free to drop those. And Richie, did you want to ask a question to get us started while people are ruminating?
For sure. Thanks, Kenzie. Can I just say, Caitlin, Nora, I think what really touched me more than what you've been able to create and sort of this through line throughout that you have, this really big intentionality of always learning and teaching, right, at the level of university level instructors. That's what you said, right? Everything has an intention behind it. Was that little part when you were both talking about what you learned from one another, to hear that because we don't often hear that in academia in sort of these public settings, so that was really nice to hear what you've done there. Thank you for that. I am curious. I am very curious. I have so many questions. um, let's start from the beginning then. Caitlin, you mentioned that previously you helped graduate students create a game about sort of the biases of the immigration process, right? You were part of that. And Nora, you've been creating educational games, right? Particularly the one on menstrual literacy. I wonder if you could sort of take us through, was there a particular moment where you decided, video games as a medium or as a way to think through things is important to my work? Sort of, or in other words, why and how have video games become sort of a big part in who you are as researchers and communicating the stuff you care about? Can you take us through that?
Nora, do you want to start or should I?
I'm happy to, but you can. I'm
Hi.
easy.
You go ahead.
Yeah, I think my experience as a rural educator really was what inspired me to move into the video game sphere, with education and with understanding everything in the world. I think that it's just a great tool to convey stuff, and especially with students, there's a level of engagement that you just can't get with a lot of other things. Um, in areas where there is a lot less access to technology, you still get a lot of kids who are, hacking or doing social activism online or accessing just larger connection that way. And I find that video games are such a way to do that safely, which is really important to me in my research.
And this is kind of bringing up our disparate like academic backgrounds again that folded together really well. But I did some of my earlier degrees in English literature, that kind of area. So like doing narrative analysis, that kind of content analysis. Always a big games fan, of course. And there is still kind of that bias. Well, okay, we have the whole debate within game studies, but that's old and people have talked about it about narrative or mechanics, whatever. But in like English lit, that kind of thing, it's this whole thing of like, well, should we even be studying film? Should we even be studying games for the narratives they tell us? Like, there's still some of that bias there. Tons of people are open to it. Still a little bit of bias. And like, you still get kids wondering, like, not applying a critical lens to some of the things they're choosing to engage in because they don't view it as a kind of highbrow literature or something. So they're like, we can't, why would we critically analyze this, even though it's what we're consuming instead of that highbrow literature? So this is what is influencing us. This is what we're influencing. This is how we explore our identities. And it's like, I don't know, to me, if a lot of people are doing it, even if people say it's not worth analyzing, it probably is. So that's how I slid into it. And now I'm gradually trying to get into that qualitative side with Nora's help.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a process, right? Of trying to like pull different pieces together to kind of make it work. We have a question from Gerald in the chat, which I'll read aloud for the recording. Thank you, Gerald, for boldly jumping into the comments. So Gerald says, thanks for the talk. Question: is someone interested in design as a way of knowing or thinking? Has your thinking about Gen AI evolved or shifted as a result of this work?
I'll jump first this time, if that works. Definitely. A big part of that was the literature Nora brought in at the get, like getting to talk through the lens of the attention economy. Um, Gave me some words for things I was trying to formulate, and it was like, oh, cool, someone already said the things and figured it all out, so we can just move on from there. But it was a really cool way to apply that to game design and think about like what the ideal focused environment would be for trying to focus on something on like our tablet or our cell phone or whatever, and then actually try to think about how do I now pull people away from that? How would I be pulled away from that? How would Nora be pulled away from that? Like, what kind of things are we engaging with in a day-to-day process, which makes us like put our phones away, lock them in a box somewhere for a period of time. So it got me thinking about where my attention goes and where other people's attention goes in a new way. And that was through the game design process. So definitely had me questioning what is going on with AI at a deeper level.
Yeah, I think on my end, there's definitely some engagement with AI that is sort of begrudging and has been since the beginning of that. The tool is sort of gradually being integrated into every way we interact with these pieces of tech. And you can turn it off in the best ways you can if you want to, but whether or not you want to, whether you find it serves you is its own question. I think while I have my own feelings on large LLMs, there are definitely smaller AI bots that, there's Karen Howe has this great moment in her work where she talks about this difference between needing the small AI bots that can solve, that can identify cancer, like those really intensive, wonderful pieces of research, and how separate they are from these large data scraping, uh, huge networks of power. Um, and so, in terms of Gen AI and LLMs in general with this production, I don't know if my perspective has changed a lot, but the way I think about it approaching us has changed. You know how AI is sort of walking towards us in every tool, and it presents itself in these corners now that we didn't expect to look for it, and we don't really know how it's changing the way we think, right? As it continually presents itself as this option or support or reinforced tool, what does that mean if we rely on it? What are we giving up when we use it? What are we gaining, right? Are we gaining time? Are we gaining more attention economy? That's, I think, where I keep coming back to with this discussion in this game that hopefully pushes that forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like that idea of it approaching us and like what is the frame in which it's approaching us. Um, cool. Interesting. Thank you. I see Jess with a hand raised, so let me allow to talk. And Jess, you can go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing your relationship building with us. This has been really cool to see. And I'm just wondering if, so I know that co-designing a game digitally, not in the same physical space, is challenging. And I'm just curious if you two would like to or could speak a little bit more to like actually what that collaboration looked like. Um, yeah, using the same tool and just like how you navigated that sort of collaborative piece of the design.
You want to, which one of us
Sure.
should start?
I think in the beginning it felt very much like I brought a half-baked idea to Caitlin and said, "Here is my pie." And Caitlin said, "We need to turn the oven on first." I'd never touched Unity with even a 10-foot pole, and so having her be able to show this is how you make an account. Like that's where we were starting from. Was really wonderful. And then us fleshing out this idea and as the game building process goes on, streamlining and in some ways, some moments cutting things that we would like to make that we just simply will not have time for in terms of the span and creation of a game that is functional. Um, yeah, I think the distance makes it hard, but at the same time, maybe makes it easier to turn off the computer and walk away from something that gets incredibly stressful sometimes. Not with each other. We never, as far as I know, got frustrated with each other. But it, yeah, you're learning a new tool online. Any new tool can be frustrating, and I think having that distance was difficult, but also maybe helpful for the style of collaboration that both Kenzie and Rishi set up with us, which is this check in once a week, work on it a little bit, and then step back kind of project.
And from like a practical end, it also involved having many screens open on our own individual desks. Like I pulled out old laptops. There was a lot of screen sharing of like, this is where I am in Unity right now. This is the thing I'm working on. Can you not come in and like, I'm gonna also a lot of checking between, okay, what were you editing? If I'm pushing this new version, is it gonna mess with something you were trying to do? Because and there's still stuff where we're like, oh no, how do we solve this? Luckily, we have some friends we can go to for tips who actually like have done these things before. But it's a lot of like baby steps in certain directions, messing things up. We've watched some tutorial videos together, and sometimes we'll do swaps. Like we'll be on call and we'll just like mute our things and we'll be like, all right, we're trying to design this thing or we're trying to troubleshoot this thing, and we'll both look for videos. I'll watch one, Nora will watch one. We'll then swap and watch each other's videos, and then we'll discuss it. And kind of whoever feels more comfortable tackling that issue will tackle that one while the other person goes off and does the other task. So there was lots of long sessions where we were on call for a long time and we only talked for maybe like 30% of it. But like Nora was saying, that was also super effective for when we got frustrated with like the coding itself and the troubleshooting. And again, not with each other. That was actually super helpful. It was also helpful. We would tend to get frustrated at different times, so the other person could play support and be like, "It's cool. We'll figure it out." Like, what if I look at it for a bit and you go do something else? So we were just like heavily tuned in, all the screens, long calls, with lots of support. But it was great that we could then step away from that when the meeting ended and go to our other projects. So that's a little bit more on the practical side of how it boiled down. So it's working so far.
I think our longest call was 5 hours.
So yeah,
With
it
with
didn't. Yeah, with breaks. Yeah, we were glued to our seats the whole time. It didn't feel like five. The time just goes by. Like we're tired at the end, but we're also amped up. So
My goodness, 5 hours. Woo! Yes, the MMP does not officially endorse 5 hour Zoom meetings. but if you do, go for it.
It was
Um,
Discord, so don't worry.
Yeah, and to be fair, we had some super long meetings, and I mean maybe we did actually skip one of our 10-week meetings because we'd had a double meeting one week. It was really long. We both had personal stuff that week, like different deadlines and things. So we had the chat and we were like, what if we just quietly skip this one and don't tell Kenzie and Richie? And now I'm tattling on both of us. But I mean, we have 5 hour meetings, so I think we're fine.
you probably made up like weeks worth in one of your meetings. I'm just gonna ask Evan's questions, so we'll go to Kenzie's and then Jules's question through Mark. So Evan asked this great question. They said, I'm wondering how your experiences have been doing research that involves making things from an institutional perspective, e.g., are universities, supervisors, libraries, and conferences supportive, for example, and whether you have new thoughts on this after your collaboration.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, and maybe the most cop-out answer, working with the university has been the people who are really supportive is wonderful, and the university is only as good as the people that you are accessing it through and with. Um, so in that way, I have found CGSA to be really helpful. I have really enjoyed the places where UBC has allowed me to work and give me time or space in my work calendar, whatever that looks like, to create and work with Caighlan and do this. Um, yeah, I think from an educator in the institution perspective, being able to offer a tool to my students is like the most exciting thing that could come from this project. To have something that I can bring and say, here, teacher candidates who want to learn and engage with this thing with your high school students, like, here is something free that I can hand you that I had, I had my fingers in making is like a really beautiful thing. So, from my position within the university, it's great. And from the people who support me, it's great. But the university itself, I don't know. Mixed feelings.
Uh, I'd echo that it's the people. And in my doctorate, I had very supportive supervisor, very supportive professors otherwise within the department. And people at my library at my doctoral university, they were happy to help if you just came and let them know you needed something. So I was very lucky in having like great colleagues, great supervisors. But I think this kind of ties into your question in an interesting way, Evan, because I was in my gap year when I did this program. I was not affiliated with any university. It was only lucky that the university I graduated from lets you have access to the library a year after you graduate. So I'm running out of time. But this is one of the reasons why this kind of program was great for me as a scholar in between actual affiliations, because if my library had not given me that access, because there were some articles that Nora would mention, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, I got it. And then she was like, oh, I could have sent it to you. So if my library had not given me access for this extra year, having this partnership with Nora would have been able to send me an article. But I think it really highlights how like we do need those affiliations, whether the university is good or not, whether our supervisors are good or not. It just doubles down again on things that we all know, which is that we need this info and it's actually really hard to access if you are not affiliated. So the partnership kind of highlighted that for me too.
Yeah, that's so interesting, especially like when we're thinking about different kinds of people we might be collaborating. Like Nora, if you're collaborating with classroom teachers, like they don't have access to university library resources usually, right? Like I work with nonprofits all the time, they don't have it. So, oh no, we lost Nora. Hopefully she'll be back in right away. But yeah, like collaboration is a way to kind of bridge perhaps some of these gaps that emerge as we move between institutions, or the institutional support is not necessarily providing everything that we need. Okay, we'll hope that Nora reappears here. So for now, this is just a question for you, Caighlan. So Jules from Tag popped a question in the chat. If you have a plan for play testing the game before you use it in a classroom. Nora, you're back. Excellent. Okay, I'll restart the question. So this is a question from Jules from Tag, who asked, do you have a plan for playtesting the game before you use it in a classroom? And if so, what aspects of the game are you most curious about gathering data on?
Hey, testing. Nora, I would cede to your actual experience running these types of things before. I don't know that we've talked about what kind of like pre-classroom playtesting we want to do beyond ourselves or people we know, which is obviously crazy biased, but it's something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the privilege of being an instructor is that you have a class to playtest with that isn't their classes and isn't just releasing it out into the wild. Um, so in that sense, I think we are actually hoping to get together and have Caighlan come into my class and hopefully be able to take notes as I'm facilitating and bringing this game as a playtesting moment there. As well as, like we mentioned in our presentation, we are bringing what we have to uh, at least CGSA in the fall for, or not CGSA, sorry, ECGBL in the fall for anyone who might be attending and to get some thoughts from other scholars who can test it out in a smaller game testing sphere.
I think that would be super fun. In terms of what aspects of the game we're most curious about gathering data on, I'm interested to hear you answer it as well, Nora, because we've talked about it before, but like in this setting, and I don't think we've mentioned it lately because we've been focused on other things. I One thing that occurred to me that I'm just really interested to see how people react is if they find it fun trying to keep up with closing the windows. Like, will people get lost in the challenge of that rather than thinking about, will people not choose the AI because instead of finding it hard and distracting from the book, they're actually having more fun trying to keep up with the windows than they are trying to read through? Like, I'm wondering if that aspect of it is going to come into play if we design it well enough in the end, in the polished version, of course, if it's not janky, but
I mean, I think we'll see. I'm hoping that the sort of facsimile of a real reading experience and the parodying of these levels of, alerts and aggressive advertisements will trigger that panic that I think someone might have even mentioned in the chat a little bit, the visceral feeling that you see in the late stage of our game. But it's hard to tell, I guess. We'll find out. That's what playtesting's for, right?
definitely. I also quickly am interested. This is from the lit studies background. If anyone who plays it that has actually read Dorian Gray, and then when they lose, if they lose, again, it's not a win-lose scenario. It's more what your experience is and what you take from it. But what their opinion would be of the AI summary, which is in going to, of course, leave a bunch of things out, maybe miss some of the nuances, maybe completely miss like the homoeroticism of the book. So I'd be interested in people who've read the book, then getting the summary and being like, that doesn't hit the main points. Or if they think that it's actually a sufficient summary, I'll be interested in that too.
Yeah, and then for those of you attending, just so you know, the only time we ever used AI for any of this was just to generate the summaries themselves, and we used several different AI tools to create different summaries of the book through various points onward and the various points beforehand. So we have sort of a retroactively, you read this far, here's a summary. Here's a summary of the rest of the book, and the rest of the book summary is maybe a couple sentences, right? Um, but just to understand that we are actually using AI summaries and their accuracy or inaccuracy is entirely based on the AI that created it.
Super cool. That like legit use of AI in game development. Cosign. That's really interesting. Hopefully your data is not that a certain subset of participants is like, oh sweet, there's an AI summary. I don't have to read this book and like spam through the AI summary. But you never know. Okay, I have a question for the two of you. Because you sound like you were doing kind of a tandem process of designing the game and like writing about the game at the same time, and like these dual tracks of the creation work and the like academic research side of things, which sounds like a lot to juggle. Is there anything you learned about like balancing or coordinating these two pieces together that you think you could come out with and be like, next time, now I know to do X, Y, or Z?
Hmm. I think there was, okay, kind of an answer to the question. We had one stumbling block early on where even though like we were getting along so well, like I was really comfortable talking to Nora, I was starting to get a little overwhelmed with some of my own like personal side projects. And I was teaching in the winter, so that was also like a lot of work. And I didn't full kind of like being openness of how much energy you actually have to dedicate to something at a given time. Because Nora and I had, so I guess I'll say this is like openness with your co-working partner and the willingness to like keep to commitments, but also adjust schedules when the other person needs that to happen and like move time around. This is where we started having like sometimes we'll miss a meeting 1 week, but we'll have a 3-day work session at this time that works for both of us. Because there was a period when I was starting to get overwhelmed with everything I had put on my own plate. I made that decision and then I got overwhelmed and I wasn't candid with Nora about it right up front. It like kind of escalated to a certain point. But when I eventually did tell her, she was just so accepting of it. And like we had a good chat about it and a good chat about what was actually feasible for me. And like just all the stress just like wafted off. And like most of it was stress from other projects, but Nora just being really supportive and being willing to shift our timeline in certain directions and prioritize some of the stuff that had tighter deadlines, but also would be less stressful to work on at that period. So for me, it was just like learning to actually be genuinely open with this work partner who was very willing to work with me in turn to make the timeline not drive me crazy. So I'm very grateful for her for that. And yeah, so there's kind of a tip in there somewhere, or just me talking about our partnership.
I mean, I think I thought of the same moment when the question was asked, was that this was a pivotal moment for us where I could tell something was up and I didn't know what. But and this was maybe again a personal relationship or mentorship thing, but I'm really blunt. So it was kind of a what do we need to do to make this work? And here are the outliers of what absolutely has to happen versus all the noise and all the other sides of the project that we'd love to do, right? And so bounding that was really helpful, I think, for both of us. And it made it a lot clearer, okay, what can we ask of each other in this moment? And what do we have to just say, here's what we're doing. We're not adding anything else. Like after we applied to both conferences, we thought, we'll apply to two because one of them will take us and probably one of them won't. And then we will only have to do one. And with one of them, there's a paper, and with one of them, we're just going to make the game and it's going to be nice and smooth and easy. And then when both said yes, it was like, okay, we weren't expecting to sign on to this much additional work, right? We had the MMP. We were so excited to give this talk. We were excited to be able to come and say we have this other conference and this piece, this game prototype. But the additional agreement that we had made together to other places was not the expected workload. And I think just being really straightforward with each other on like what we can do really benefited both of us in how we could manage this in a calendar that is always changing, as I'm sure everybody in chat knows as well.
Um,
Yeah, it was
Thank you
great.
both, by the way. I speaking of sort of managing things as they are, I just have one last question from Thomas Tam, who studies Pop Tropica. But anyway, that's besides the point. Thomas asks this question. I would love to know how you balance between game dev and academia, or maybe tips for people who are working on game dev and their research at the same time. Because Thomas is doing a master's and is running a game studio at the same time, so it's very overwhelming and stressful. Any sorts of tips and tricks, at the personal communication all the way to like the technical, pragmatic levels that you can give Thomas and folks?
I think I'll start with scheduling if you can speak to mechanics, Caitlin. In terms of just, we found it really beneficial, especially with the game dev part, to have sort of longer structured sessions where it was like, we don't have anything right after this. Like if this is what today turns into, this is what today turns into. And in the same vein, not picking up the game dev side of things for a lot of the meetings because it just simply will not be an hour or 2 hours if you're getting into it and trying to be productive. So recognizing that anything creative and especially anything with coding is going to take so much more out of you. Even writing is going to take so much more out of you that having really dedicated sections of time and then saying, like the rest of my life doesn't exist for these 3 days. We are writing for these 3 days, and that this is the only project we're doing, but it's only 3 days. We don't have to think about it before and we don't have to think about it after. And the same with the game dev side of things. It was we're going to do this and it's going to be a long meeting and you're not going to have anything else to give that day. You know? And so in our scheduling, as we learned this together, I'd never done that either in that way. It was it's really changed both how we moved together in terms of working and then also how we could plan for our lives. And we have a sort of hopefully to finish up the game over the summer. We have another like intensive couple day period scheduled to do that, but we're not picking up the game between like before then, and we're hopefully not picking it up after that. You know, it's just here's that big chunk of time, ignore everything else is maybe the offering I can hand you. That sounds really stressful, Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% everything Nora said, and it does sound like you have an amazing amount of stuff on your plate. Sorry, my screen is being funny. But I think it's fine. I think you guys see me fine. You're just
We do.
looking weird to me. Perfect. Um, I guess all I have to add is how the if you do have people that like even there was a lot of those chunks of time we were working together, whereas I mentioned before for the game design side of it, but it was the same for the paper writing. We were just on call quiet, like muted on call for like an hour doing our own work. And it was that whole like accountability thing, but it did really help. The idea that here's someone else who's doing a different part of this project, but they're getting work done and then you're getting work done and then you'll come back together and share it. Obviously, I don't know what you have on your plate, so you might not have people that will like be doing some of this with you or but the accountability thing can be really useful. I found that the same in my doctoral studies, like when I got to go to little writing groups and writing retreat things, like I don't know, anyone else who's done those, I find them helpful. Um, but I also found, and this is another thing that is I realize is not possible for lots of people, but we did have room to move some of our goalposts. And when we had that frank discussion, that was why we're not as far along with the game as we would like to be. That's why like we still have polishing to do and some things to work out. Because when we had that discussion of what cannot move that we have committed to that we do want to do, and what can move, even if we wish we'd had it done earlier. So we did have to move some of our goalposts, and that ended up preserving our sanity and letting us do better at the other things that we could not move. So goalpost moving, accountability. Yeah, that's all I have to add.
Nora, Caighlan, thank you so very much on behalf of Kenzie and I and everybody here. Our chat is popping off. Roll in the donations, as they say. I don't know. So I'm just going to screen share this as part of our series. We are now on our second of 4. So this week was Caighlan and Nora. And next week we have Aparajita and Brandon, who will be talking about cozy horror. Ooh, what does that mean? Right? On Slime Rancher 2, to be precise, as part of the multiplayer mentorship program. That jingle is going to stick one day. Just to let folks know, if you are curious about what Nora and Caighlan are up to, feel free to sort of search them up online. Oh, am I back? Something's glitching. Feel free to search them up online, contact them down the line as well on our CGSA website, and Discord will also be sharing their sort of public-facing profile because these folks are always game for collaboration. Other than that, yes, we'll send an email about future talks, Jess. Other than that, see everybody next week, same time, Tuesday at 12 p.m. ET. And if Nora and Caighlan could just stay behind for a little bit. On behalf of Kenzie and I, thank you very much. Ciao.
Thanks for coming,
Thanks, everyone.
folks. Bye.